Hello, my name's David Seaman, and this is the Three Lions Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Three Lions Podcast. My name is Russell Osborne and this is an independent England football supporters podcast. Welcome to 2025. Happy New Year to you. Hope you had an enjoyable Christmas break. Put your feet up, ate a bit too much, lost track of time. It's okay, you're not alone. Both Manchester clubs appeared to do exactly the same. I know many of you saw the regular England Advent calendar I posted in the run-up to Christmas over on social media. Just looking back, it just looked back at some of the moments of the past year. 2025 is one hopefully with plenty more memories to be made and seen. It is a year with no tournament for the men, but it does have the women's Euro finals in Switzerland, which I'll come to in a moment. But as the clock struck midnight and 2024 became 2025, the men's team had a new manager. Thomas Tuchel, his 18-month contract had begun. The former Borussia Dortmund, PSG, Chelsea, Bayern Munich manager takes his first steps into international management. Can he negotiate the difference between the two? We will have to wait and see. But without being too blasé about it, and with the greatest respect to Albania and Latvia, his first two opponents in March, won't really be until the finals in Canada, America and Mexico when we'll really see what he's made of. But his first assignment, as it were, was to take in Tottenham against Newcastle in the Premier League on the 4th of January. So who could he have had his eyes on? Well, to be honest, if he'd have stuck around long enough, Daniel Levy may have approached him about a job. But no, really, he was there to look at who was on show. And to be fair to Tottenham, they are ravaged by injuries and illness. But they did start with 4 English players. Of note, they were Archie Gray, who's played for the under-15s through to the under-21s for England. Jed Spence, who's played 6 times for the 21s. And then up front, Dominic Solanke, who added 2 caps to his tally under Lee Carsley recently. And it was Solanke who opened the scoring in Spurs' 2-1 defeat. James Maddison came on in the second half, but he's not played for England since the 3-0 win over Bosnia and Herzegovina up at Newcastle before the Euros. And for Newcastle, well, 5 Englishmen started: Lewis Hall, Tino Livramento, Dan Burn, Anthony Gordon and Jacob Murphy. Hall, well, he recently played against Greece and Ireland in November. Likewise, Livramento against Ireland. Dan Burn, well, he was often mentioned last year as a possibility, but so far, nothing really. Anthony Gordon, well, he became a recent regular over the last year, 18 months, with 9 caps to his name. Jacob Murphy, well, he's appeared for various underage levels, but at 29, well, his moment, I think it may have passed him by. And then from the bench, Lloyd Kelly has played for both the 20s and 21s. Harvey Barnes has just the 1 cap. That was earned back in 2020 in a 3-0 win against Wales. And then there was Joe Willock and Sean Longstaff, neither whom have won a senior cap. So there were a few to make Tuchel's trip worthwhile, and I'm sure it's going to be the first of many trips around the country, visiting grounds and Premier Inns over the next few months. But back to those finals in Switzerland later in the year. since that last episode that I put out in mid-December, the draw took place for those finals. Back on the 16th of December, a raft of former players congregated at the Swiss Tech Convention Centre in Lucerne to make the draw, including our own Ian Wright, a big advocate for the women's game. He co-hosted the draw. Now, England were in pot 2, alongside Italy, Iceland and Denmark, so couldn't be drawn with any of those. It is a competition with just 16 teams. That's broken down into 4 groups of 4. Top 2 from each group qualify for the quarterfinals and onwards to the semis and then the final. Same as the finals that we hosted in 2022. Now, the finals, as I say, will be held in Switzerland beginning on the 2nd of July and finishing with the final on the 27th. And with so many quality sides already having made it through to the finals, England were guaranteed to pull a tough opponent or two. And they did that. From pot 1, they pulled France. From pot 3, the Netherlands. And from pot 4, Wales. So many little side stories with each of these opponents. France, a side we faced in qualifying last year. We lost at home at Newcastle St James's Park, then beat them in the return leg in St Etienne. The French actually finished top of the group, a point ahead of ourselves. The Netherlands, of course, homeland to our coach Sarina Wiegman. They actually finished second in Group A1, level on points with Italy. Wiegman actually took her homeland to victory in the Euros back in 2017 on home soil. And the last time we faced them was back at the end of 2023, beating them 3-2 in Nations League qualifying. And then Wales, our near neighbours. They're actually participating in their first ever finals after beating the Republic of Ireland in the playoffs. Now, it's been a while since we last played them. 2018, in fact, in the qualifiers for the 2019 World Cup. Drawing 0-0 with them at home, but winning 3-0 away to secure our pathway to France in 2019. So the dates and venues for each game are as follows. We're all pitched together in Group D and begin against France on the 5th of July in Zurich. We then stay in Zurich to face the Dutch on the 9th. Then finally Wales on the 13th in St Gallen. There is no getting away from the fact that this is a tough group to negotiate. That's what the Lionesses will have to do if they want to hold on to their trophy that they famously won in 2022.
I don't believe it! Give that man a knighthood!
Now, let's turn our attention to a former England manager. I know in the recent past I've spoken about Gareth Southgate on numerous occasions. I think rightfully so. Be it on the episode on who I thought were candidates to replace him, my own chat with him. There was the one where we spoke about the London stage performance about him, Dear England. Then when he did finally step down, I recorded one. I also spoke with Charlie Tidswell, host of the Gate 102 podcast dedicated to all 102 games that Gareth oversaw as England manager. Well, now, as I'm sure you've seen, Gareth has been awarded a knighthood in the New Year's honours for services to football. And that is the key thing. Services to football. Generally been amazed by the amount of people that this has rattled. If the knighthood was titled say, for losing 2 European finals, or it's a knighthood for rewarding failure, or a knighthood for how much money he's earned, it's another thing I've heard people say, then you'd have a point. But it's not. It's for services to football. Gareth began his professional career back at Crystal Palace in 1988 and stayed within the game for 36 years, including those 8 years as senior England manager. I feel there's nothing wrong with people in the public eye, sports stars, famous individuals, being awarded these titles, but they do overshadow the people of the local community that really should be recognised more so. Charity workers, volunteers, teachers, NHS workers, but they aren't given the headlines as the likes of Gareth have been, which I feel is a shame, but that's how newspapers sell, or clickbait works. But it's not just Gareth. Plenty of other sporting stars have been awarded honours. Olympic champion and BBC's Sports Personality of the Year, Keely Hodgkinson, awarded an MBE. Hannah Cockcroft, wheelchair Paralympian, a CBE. Back to football, David Moyes, an OBE for services to football. Alan Hansen, those of a certain age will remember him, former Liverpool player and pundit. He was awarded an MBE for services to football and broadcasting. I mentioned about some of those people that may be overseen but deserve the recognition. One of those is Dawn Astle, daughter of Jeff Astle. Jeff, who won 5 England caps and is a West Brom hero. Well, he passed away in 2002 with a degenerative brain injury and dementia. This was caused through heading the ball back in his day. Of course, the ball back then was a totally different object to what it is now. Dawn was awarded the MBE for services to footballers with dementia after setting up the Jeff Astle Foundation. So, yeah, congratulations to her. That's one of the situations where someone really does deserve an award. Now, Gareth was actually awarded an OBE for services to football back in January 2019. And he's not the first England manager to receive a knighthood. Of course, Alf Ramsey, he was the first. He received his knighthood in the January 1967 New Year's honours list, of course, a year after leading England to the World Cup final. That was the same honours list that also awarded Bobby Moore with an OBE. And I guess if you're thinking of people who never actually got a knighthood, there's one person, Bobby Moore. 1978, Walter Winterbottom, England's very first manager. He was awarded a knighthood. He'd already been awarded a CBE and an OBE. And then in 2002, Bobby Robson was awarded a knighthood for services to football. England manager between 1982 and 1990. Fondly remembered by many. Now, here to join me once again to have a chat about Sir Gareth Southgate. He's England fan and host of the Gate 102 podcast, Charlie Tidswell. Hello, Charlie.
Hi, Russell. You okay?
I'm very well, thank you. Happy New Year to you.
Yes, thank you.
This is what we're talking about here, Sir Gareth Southgate. Fully deserved in my opinion. Go on, tell us your thoughts when you heard about it.
Yeah, I think it's so well deserved. I think he's given so much to the country. I think it's deserved for what he's done on and off the pitch. I think if you're looking at on the pitch, he's taken us to leaps and bounds since when he came in. If you look at what it was like beforehand to what it's like now, it's incredible. But I also think off the pitch, he's used, football's a massive platform to promote change. And I think he's used that to his advantage by, being the England manager is a senior role in the country. And I think he's used that to try and make a society a better place by standing up for racial abuse and also the LGBTQ plus community, stuff like that. So I think he's maximised the role to make a change, which is why I think he deserves the knighthood as well as his success with England on the pitch.
Yeah, the second part of what you just said there, I think, is the major factor. A lot of people got distracted by the results in his time. Obviously, there were a lot of good results. There were a couple of bad results that obviously didn't go our way. But I think people got distracted by those two particular results that didn't ultimately end in a trophy. But those off the field activities and what he'd done for society, how he became a role model for people. I remember there were tweets going out about him when I think probably when he was interviewed after various games or when he wrote the open letter to supporters about how people were saying, do you know what, he's such an honest guy, and how he comes across. And they're obviously people come across in different ways, but he has that positive vibe about him. And then on the flip side, on the football, the players he introduced and the transition from where we were under be it Roy Hodgson or Sam Allardyce, to that transition of changing the ethos of the England side. He was fully responsible for that.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think when you said about the trophy sort of situation, I always think it reminds me of the glass half full, glass half empty analogy, because, it's the first time we got to two finals since, 1966. Yeah. And for me, that's success. But others who maybe see that as failure, I do question it, because I always think you can be a success and not win a trophy. And going back to off the pitch, I always think during COVID, it was a tough time for people. And I think he was the leader of our country, I believe. And I think he was the person who sort of you looked up to during that time for me, and the England team. And he brought many people together. I always remember that, I think it was the England-Panama game when we won 6-1. Yeah. We were watching it at my house, and we had my mum's side of the family round and my dad's side of the family round. And, they didn't know each other too well. And it was like we're all one big, massive family. We're all celebrating. And it's good for Southgate sort of creating that culture within the team that produced these results and make us all happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And just think it was shortly before it was officially announced that he'd won a knighthood. I don't think can you win a knighthood, or are you just awarded one? I don't know how it actually works. But it was a few days before it was officially announced or awarded. He appeared on Desert Island Discs. For those of you that maybe don't know what Desert Island Discs is, it's been a long running BBC Radio 4 feature where the presenter speaks to various famous individuals, basically about their life. And they, throughout the half hour, however long it goes on for, they talk about 8 songs that mean things to them, and they're given a luxury item and a book to take on or something along those lines. And Gareth featured on this. The presenter, Lauren Laverne, I'm not quite sure if she's, if football is her thing, but she had to actually ask him about that penalty in 1996, which was a little awkward, but on the whole, I thought it was a really interesting insight into him and him growing up and sort of becoming the person that he is to being a sir now. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah, no, I listened to the majority of it, and I thought it was really interesting. The bit he said about he knew he was leaving before Euro 2024 finished. I thought that was quite interesting. But like I say, I think you could tell in the interview what a humble, integral and honest guy he is. And and that was evident throughout his time as England manager. And yeah, I'm so pleased he got a knighthood, to be honest, because he deserves one probably more than a lot of people. And yeah, no, it's really, really good that Desert Island Disc.
Yeah, you can go find that. It'll be on the BBC iPlayer or however they promote that. Just, search that one out. It's really worth listening to. Charlie, thank you very much for your time. I know you're working your way through Gareth's 102 games on the podcast. Whereabouts are you up to at the moment?
Yeah, so my next game will be about the Nigeria game, the 2-1 win at Wembley. It was the World Cup warm-up game. So over the next few weeks, I'll be talking about the 2018 World Cup, which I'm quite excited for, to be honest. So yeah, many memories to come. My last episode I did was a Sam Allardyce one. It was sort of like a one-off episode. So yeah, that's available. But now you can find it on Spotify and YouTube and all the socials as well.
Great stuff. Charlie, as always, great to speak to you, and no doubt we'll catch up throughout the year.
Yeah, no, cheers, Russell. Appreciate it.
Now, since the last podcast I put out back in mid-December of last year, George Eastham has passed away. He died on the 20th of December. George Eastham was a squad member of the 1966 World Cup winning side. He never actually played a part on the pitch during the tournament, but he won 19 caps between 1963 and 1966. Born in Blackpool in 1936, the son of George Eastham Sr., who also played for England on one occasion. George Jr. actually began his career with a Northern Irish side called Ards, where he spent 3 years as what was known back then as an inside forward. He then moved to Newcastle United, where he spent 4 years playing 124 times, scoring on 29 occasions. Now, in 1960, he wanted to move away from Newcastle, and it was at this point that he, as an individual, helped change the way players could transfer between clubs. His contract with Newcastle, that expired back in 1959, and he wanted to move away. However, at the time, the clubs had a retain and transfer system, which meant that they could keep the players' registration and refuse to pay them should they request a move. George, well, he felt this was unfair and went on strike for 8 months and took the issue to court. A case he eventually won. The courts deeming that the retain and transfer system was unfair. So he moved down south to Arsenal, where between 1960 and 1966 he played 223 times, scoring 41 goals. And he would also later play for Stoke City. So he had a major impact in the way that transfers happened back in the day. Of course, that then sort of moved on to the Bosman ruling and various other ways of how players moved between clubs. But yeah, who knows where we would have been, how players would have moved if it wasn't for George Eastham going to court over it. But with regards to England, he played for the England under-23 side before making the step up to the senior side in 1963, making his debut against Brazil at Wembley in a 1-1 draw. And he would score twice in those 19 appearances he made, once against the Republic of Ireland in 1964, then against Denmark in July 1966, in his last appearance in what was a World Cup warm-up match. And we were speaking about New Year's honours. George was awarded the OBE for services to association football back in 1973. And I guess that transfer case was a contributing factor to that. So now there are only 3 members of the 1966 squad left with us. Sir Geoff Hurst, Terry Payne and Ian Callaghan. But I'd like to take this opportunity to pass on my condolences to George Eastham's family and friends. Now it is January, and with it being January, it's the start of the transfer window, which runs from the 1st until the 3rd of February. It's not often the most exciting, let's be honest, but on occasions it can throw a few curveballs at us, can't it? Time of recording this, nothing really has happened relating to England players, but all the stories are there. Marcus Rashford being one of the most talked about. Will he, won't he? Will he remain at Manchester United? Will he move away? I did also see a story about Chelsea possibly looking to offload Carney Chukwuemeka. Now, a player that they paid in the region of, I think it was around £20 million to Villa a couple of years back. Now, he's still only 21, and he's periodically played for Chelsea. I know he's played in a few of their European games this year. But he's got some great England youth experience. He won the under-19s Euros a few years back, scored a few goals too. Be interesting to see whether he makes a move. It's one of these players that many players that Chelsea seem to have that may be better off moving away to progress his career. We'll see. We shall see what happens as the month of January goes on. But let's leave it there. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Don't forget you can follow the show on social media. Just search Three Lions Podcast on whatever your social of choice is. And there's always the Ko-fi account should you want to contribute to the hosting of the show. It's always appreciated. ko-fi.com/Three Lions Podcast. And if you'd like to come on the show, just as Charlie did earlier on, you're more than welcome to. Perhaps you've got some England stories of your own. By all means, drop me a line. You can do it via your socials or your email. Send one to me, 3lionspodcast@gmail.com. I look forward to hearing from you. So once again, Happy New Year to you, and I'll be back again soon. So until then, take care. Cheers.